Okay, so hi, Miss Hannes. We are from Tutorial 4, and then the film that we chose was The Journey. And this is our 6 group mates. And moving on. So about the film, The Journey is a Malaysian film directed by director Chew Kheng Guan, and it's part of the People's Project, where main characters from the film were played by people casted from the public. The film was released as a Chinese New Year film in 2014, but instead of a typical exaggerating kind of comedy homecoming celebration film, The Journey took a more realistic and simple approach in telling the story and explores the values of Malaysian Chinese culture, as well as its interrelation and communication with other cultures. So moving on, the film has an IMDb score of 7.4, and I think it's averagely good. And the film has won 5 awards in total from Malaysia Book of Records and Malaysia Film Festival. The Journey is known to be a must-watch film, Malaysian film that represents Malaysia culture realistically and genuinely touches audiences' emotions. So the first argument that is presented in the story is differences in tradition and custom practices. Chuan, coming from a Malaysian Chinese background, is very persistent in practicing cultural traditions. When he was invited to attend his friend's daughter's wedding, he questioned their decision in having a semi-traditional kind of wedding ceremony. And when his friend advised him to just let the younger generation do as they prefer, he guaranteed that his daughter, B, will have a traditional wedding instead. Benji, on the other hand, he sees no need for a wedding and maintained his stance in not having one, as how they discussed with B. Benji also offended Chuan with a taboo where he gave Chuan the chicken head, which is a sign of bad luck in Chinese culture, during reunion dinner. Benji doesn't understand Chuan for not being flexible with the taboos and also having a conservative mindset when Chuan didn't allow him to share a room with his fiancée B. So moving on, Chuan is a person that upholds Chinese values and takes a conservative approach in life. In a collectivistic culture, he thinks that it is his responsibility to continue the tradition, and a wedding is part of that. That decision doesn't just involve the family, but also friends and relatives, and it is also a chance to gather together. So after that, according to the economic imperative, 面子, which is face, is very important in Chinese culture. So after that, when he declared that he will have a traditional wedding for his daughter, he can't really compromise anymore. But Benji, on the other hand, coming from a British English culture, the individualistic culture prioritizes personal needs and rights instead. So he does not agree to compromise in having a wedding until he was really forced to do so. Custom and taboos to him doesn't really apply to him, and he wasn't really used to it, or could even not, he couldn't even understand it, and it was rejectful and doesn't want to please Chuan because of that. And I will pass it to my teammates for the next argument.
This film also shows prejudice about other cultures and groups. Chuan is a typical character who is biased against other cultures. We can see that he is very uncomfortable with interracial love. For example, Chuan was very resistant and displeased with his foreign son-in-law, and didn't want his daughter married to him at first. In addition, there is a detail in the film where Chuan's parents tell him that he and Fatima were very close in elementary school. But Chuan responds like, she is Malay and I'm Chinese. How could we fall in love? And then there is also a scene in which Chuan discussed the gender of the tree that won frozen with his classmate when they were young. Then they thought the tree was a man, but Chuan said it could also be a pondan and jokingly called it a pondan tree. But pondan is actually a derogatory term for a feminine man. Hence, you can see that Chuan and his classmates are subconsciously create a prejudice against other groups. Next, I will pass it to my group mate.
Okay, for another one of the arguments is simple happiness. In this scene, from the making of the hot air balloon until it actually takes off from the ground and starts flying, a lot of important takeaways are contained in this scene, with all leading to one final message, which is simple happiness. So let's dive deeper, or in this case, let's go higher since we're talking about hot air balloons. All right. So Uncle Chuan, or known as Chun Suk in this movie, he can be seen as a very stubborn person throughout the whole movie. But still, he has his own way of doing things. For example, we can see that he refused to attend his friend's funeral, even though he had maintained a close friendship with his friend for 50 years. This is because his daughter is currently having a wedding, and in Chinese culture, wedding and funeral should not go together. This is because one is red, one is white, and somehow they just clashed with each other. So yeah, and despite all that, he still decided to honor his deceased friend by fulfilling his wish of flying a handmade hot air balloon in a school backyard, which they studied as kids. So Chun Suk finally accepts Benji and entrusts B to him. He mentions to Benji that actually what worries him the most is B, his daughter, and hopes that Benji will take good care of her because he knows that he's old and won't be staying by B's sides forever. And despite all the language barrier, Benji immediately understands that and makes a promise to Chun Suk that he will cherish B forever. And with that, I'll pass it on to my teammates.
So another argument is the film has shown harmony in diverse and intercultural settings. It has actually involved different races of people, and it includes the element of understand each culture. Like during B and Benji's wedding ceremony, they invited guests that are from other cultural backgrounds and races, for example, Malay and British people. From this scene, we can see that even though they are having Chinese traditional wedding ceremony, they did not mind inviting people from other culture and welcome them to this ceremony with open arms. Moreover, there are many interaction between the different culture of people, which means intercultural communication. For instance, B is having a relationship with Benji, who is from the UK. Even though they are from different cultural background, they manage to understand each other culture and get married. Then Chuan has a Malay friend, Fatima, who has been a friend to him since elementary school. Although they didn't contact each other after graduation, Chuan did not forget her and drove a long way just to give her an invitation card to the wedding ceremony. On the other hand, this film involves the use of many language and dialects. It perfectly shows that Malaysia is a multicultural society. Code switching could apply in our daily life, especially for Malaysian. People always speak different language and tend to mix it when speaking, like Mandarin, English, Hokkien, Cantonese, and Malay. And they would have different accent when they speak different language. For instance, B would mix English and Cantonese when she's speaking to Chuan. Is because she's not familiar with Cantonese and she sounds fluent and confident when she speaks English. Then the film presented a unique part, which is that most Malaysia are not simply fluent in their own mother tongue. Even though Fatima is Malay, she learns and speaks Mandarin. Chuan will also understand Malay and so that they have a smooth conversation with each other. During the journey when Benji and Chuan sent wedding invitation, these two people from different culture have a huge problem communicating. However, although Benji does not understand Cantonese, he will try to use non-verbal communication to convey his feelings and message to Chuan. Lastly, Chuan has also learned some English word to greet and welcome Benji's family for attending the wedding ceremony. That's all my part. Thank you.
In the play, his father forced her to study in the UK against B's wishes in order to allow her to enjoy a better education and to have a better life and happiness in the future. This caused B's misunderstanding and complaints against her father. Through a series of stories that happened in the middle of her wedding and sending invitations, she slowly began to understand that her father's love for her was deep in her heart, but he was not good at expressing it. As the saying goes, father's love is like a mountain. Parents' love for their children is always the background of their children's life, and sometimes their behavior towards their children is a reflection of their life experience. And these things are often not understood by children. Just as being the play didn't understand her father, sent her to study in England. Well, life is just a live broadcast without dress rehearsals. The past things cannot be undone. Think about it. We are growing. Our parents are getting old. The faster we grow, the slower our parents get old.
All right. So one of the points that we came up with is actually cultural acceptance. What is cultural acceptance? Cultural acceptance is actually the appreciation and understanding of another culture. How does it work, you might ask? So cultural acceptance basically takes place when something of the other culture comes into your knowledge, and it will generally cause the person to have one of two reactions, either a conflict of culture or an acceptance of a culture. So the acceptance and a conflict does not necessarily come into effect immediately and can even be unconcluded in one's entire lifetime. The process of acceptance or conflict is a rather unpredictable one, as every person sees things through a different pair of eyes, which is the grounds of a multicultural world. So here I've listed down three of the main characters in the movie. I'm not saying that these three people are the only people who saw cultural acceptance, as literally everyone in the movie had to face it. But these three in specific is very easy to explain, and it's very emphasized in the movie. So Benji sees the importance of the traditions and gets all the traditions explained to him. In one of the parts, he was given a bracelet or something like that, and he understood the meaning behind it, and that allowed him to appreciate and understand the culture a bit more. It also helps someone to feel more connected to the culture in that way. One of the characters, B, is known to have adapted to a culture when she was forced to study abroad at a younger age. The fact that Benji is her fiance shows that she's adapted to a different culture and eventually appreciated the other culture. And Uncle Chuan is the character who shows most resistance when it comes to cultural adaptation. His main issue is the fact that he doesn't see intercultural relationships as a go-to. It's understandable. It takes everyone through a different set of stages to understand it and appreciate it. But eventually, he comes to a firm ground that he's cool with it. So thank you guys for listening. See you.